sir, with Ponte Freed. Can I take your order, please?
Hello everybody and welcome to the Gibbons Talks Boxing YouTube channel. Please subscribe if you have not done so already. I'm pleased to be joined today by promoter and manager Jamie Sanigar. Good to see you, Jamie. It's been a while.
Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you.
I guess the same as everyone else, COVID has played havoc with you professionally, and I know you were planning a show on the 28th of March last year, a really good matchup between Ciaran Gibbons and Morgan Jones for the Welsh title. And I know I was involved a little bit as well, hoping to show it online in some sort of capacity. Tell us about that and then build up to it, and almost a race against time.
Yeah, I think we had a show in Bristol in February. We just squeezed that one in, and I think we were having a press conference actually for Lee Selby's fight with George Kambosos that was meant to be in, I even forget now, May, was it?
May 9th?
Yeah, May 9th with Eddie Hearn. And you could just sense that we were losing that chance to get that fight on in March for Jones and Goodridge, which was a great fight. And we'd worked really hard especially to get the board to sanction Goodridge for that Welsh title. And it was a massive opportunity for him. And it was, likewise for Morgan, it was a chance to get another win with that Welsh title after his good win against Anthony. And it was a shame, real shame. And obviously we're here now on a year later, none the wiser when we will be able to at least look at that fight and lots of other Welsh fights.
Yeah, regards the Goodridge Morgan Jones fight, were the board in constant communications with you, or were you just getting information from the government, or what were you doing in the build up to that? Because I think I'm right in saying it was like literally a week before the event that the show was actually pulled.
Yeah, it was very much government led. The board were, they were sort of being led by the government, and we just had to wait like everybody else for announcements. And obviously financially we had to take a loss on the promotion. The work we'd done in the build up, but it is what it is. And just hopefully we can get it back on sometime later this year.
What plans have you for future promotions in the current climate? If things stay roughly the same as they are now, will you be planning any events? Yeah,
definitely. As soon as it's physically and financially possible. I think we sort of earmarked September, which was traditionally the start of the new boxing season, as when we feel that the likelihood is that we'd be able to get back to live events, but there's still a lot of ifs and maybes along the way before then. Financially, the board and certainly the small hall promoters have to work out a way to make it financially viable. At the moment, the costs for doing a show are just enormous. And just not even feasible for any small hall promoter, and that's why you're not seeing any shows at all across the country. We're talking tens and tens of thousands of costs for medical COVID trace testing. So until those start to dwindle and fall out, and I guess we'd be looking at sort of lateral flow testing where people will be tested to be able to go back to theatres and live events. That's when we can look at it for ourselves. But it's going to be a real challenge for small hall promoters because, as most boxing fans are aware, we work on a very tight budget as it is. A 20-30% reduction on fans come in if they're still fearful of COVID or whatnot, and extra costs being waylaid onto us with lateral flow testing and extra medical requirements will make it very challenging. So, we've got to weigh all this up and make sure we overcome that.
Frank Warren, Matchroom, Hennessy as well, I think, MTK, they've all put shows on. What sort of financial, extra financial costs are there? I mean, what sort of, in the region of What are you talking based on their experiences?
I think you're talking of minimum sort of 30,000, from what I gather. But to be honest, it's got to a point that it's futile for us to even investigate it. I've spoken to other sort of promoters in a similar position to us. We spoke with S4C, who we've been doing some regular shows with, and unfortunately, it's just nowhere near. And it's only those really big broadcasters like Sky and BT and Channel 5 that can finance this at the moment. And even then, promoters like Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, they're having to speculate to keep their businesses going and keep their boxes active. And I don't think anybody's generating much money in this time. But they do have deeper pockets and deeper resources. But I think they'll be very keen to get those crowds back in, because it's a major part of the income that you generate from the shows.
And of course, small hall boxing, in effect, it's actually the engine room of British boxing. Of course, we see the big guys like Joshua and the big names fighting on the Matchroom and Frank Warren shows. But they probably will reach a point where there are no up-and-coming fighters if boxers don't get out soon, I guess. Yeah,
small hall boxing is the lifeblood of the sport. It's where some of the future stars come from. The likes of Lee Selby, a prime example, came from the small hall shows. For I'd say at least 80% of probably licensed professional boxers, they feature on the small hall circuit. It's only the select few of amateur stars, and maybe those big personalities that get long-term contracts with your major promoters. So there's lots and lots of boxers out of work, no financial package or no financial compensation has been sort of offered to these boxers, no support from the governing bodies really, and they've been very much forgotten during all of this.
What would you like to see done to support grassroots boxers, if you like, or small hall boxers from the government or from the Board of Control? I mean, are they doing as much as they could be doing?
I don't think so, no. I think the British Boxing Board of Control is excellent from a governance point of view with regards to medical requirements and the medical procedures that are in place to keep boxers safe. But I don't think enough is done at the grassroots to sustain the sport. I think you see in other professional sports where a small percentage of the TV money is flowed into grassroots sport. And I think boxing would be a very strong case for a small percentage of that TV revenue money to go to small hall boxing to help those small hall promoters, because eventually your Skies, your Eddie Hearns, your Frank Warrens, your BT Sports, they have to rely on the small hall managers and promoters and boxers for opponents and some of the future stars of the sport. Well, sometimes that pipeline needs some investment as well. Same with the sponsorship money that comes into the sport especially from sort of gambling companies, etc. Just a small slice of that cake would make a massive impact on small hall boxing. And also from the Board of Control, I think the fees are not disproportionately sort of correct across the board. My license fee would cost the same as Eddie Hearn's license fee each year, while we run very different businesses. So I think certain aspects like that, need to be looked at.
And what are you telling your boxers? Because I know a lot of your boxers, especially the guys based in Wales, and I know you've got a lot of boxers in the Bristol area, the southwest of England. What are you telling them at the moment when I presume they must be texting you, phoning you, and they're probably very frustrated, looking to kick on with their careers, and some guys, I guess, might be coming towards the end of their careers, and then they can see the time ticking away?
Yeah, I think it's different. It's different for certain boxers in different stages of careers, like you said. So I think for the young ones, it's, stay in the gym, use this time to learn. Don't worry about the pressure of making weight, stuff like that. But, just focus on this time to develop and learn. Some of them, you've got to be frankly honest and say as well, some of our boxers, I've advised them to go out and get jobs, get some income on the table in the meantime. That, don't rely on this boxing, and make sure that first and foremost you're financially secure. For those that are sort of further on in the careers, there is more opportunities. Those that are established with a sort of a record, say over 10, 15 fights. Gavin Gwyn's a prime example. He featured on one of the first fight camp shows in Eddie Hearn's garden back in the summer. He's now boxing this weekend on MTK show. So he's had 2 title fights in this time. So there is opportunities for those fighters, but again, it's not always a level playing field. You're sort of, I guess, your Tony Dixon types that have got a decent enough record and they know will come and put up a good fight. But these big hall promoters, they don't want to give you 6 weeks notice or 8 weeks notice to give your boxer the best opportunity. They want to ring you with 2-3 weeks notice, and it's very hard for a boxer like Tony Dixon to stay in the gym, keep near the welterweight limit with no real idea of when he's going to be boxing. And I can't blame them when they're not ready, but my remit to them is try and be ready. But I know it's very difficult at the moment. It's very challenging. And often it's just not a level playing field for these guys with trying to box on these big hall promotions.
So what do you think the big hall promoters, as you call them, are looking for when they come ringing guys like yourself?
They want someone who comes to win, but, will come second best, because fundamentally they're building their stars of the future, their home fighters, but at the same time they want someone who's game and will put them on a good fight for TV. And also, they're hoping to unearth, if that boxer suddenly turns out to be, extraordinary or a bit of a character or personality, then you can soon turn it around, and before you know it, you're the home fighter. But generally, you're expected to turn up and put on a good show, and fundamentally the odds are all stacked against you, which is really tough.
And did you go to the fight camp with Gavin Gwyn when he fought, Jamie?
Yep. Yeah, I did. I thought it was a really innovative way to get boxing back, and I think they were sort of well received by the public, those fight camp shows, and I think Eddie Hearn's planning to do some more this summer. And Eddie's sort of always one step ahead with the promoting game, and it was a shame for Gavin. I think we all knew it was a tough fight with Tennyson, tremendous puncher, and he's really come on in his career, and he's grown into lightweight. I think he was a bit more vulnerable at super feather, and how he made featherweight, I don't know. But I think when the fight was initially made, it was going to be in Cardiff. I think we felt a British title opportunity in Gavin's, well, not his hometown, but certainly his home country, was an opportunity we couldn't turn down. And then when it switched to the fight camp, it is a different scenario with no crowd. It's not the same. And I think fights like that, a big Welsh crowd would have sort of benefited Gavin.
And just generally speaking, regarding small hall promoting, something all fans are probably guilty of, and I put myself in that bracket as well. We often say, why aren't the promoters making boxer A fight boxer B? And what are the constraints put on you as promoters to prevent certain fights from happening?
If boxer A doesn't want to fight boxer B, and vice versa, other managers that may be representing those boxers, if we don't represent them, have different ideas of what they want to do with their boxer. We're very much restricted with budget. We only have a certain amount that we can pay, and that's certainly not as attractive as trying to get on a big promotion. But then, your boxer will have a better opportunity at this level, say, for example, as a Welsh title, than going and boxing a former Olympian on a Sky Sports show and possibility of getting severely beaten, So the challenges are very much the budget and local rivalry. Some people don't want to fight someone else, and just the usuals, yeah.
I know, just being in Wales and mainly been involved in Welsh boxing the last few years, it does seem a boxer doesn't mind losing to other guys in England, but when there's a chance to lose into a fellow Welshman with local bragging rights, it does seem to put an extra bit of needle. And I think in some cases fighters have actually not taken fights because they don't want to lose to another Welshman.
Yeah, I think that goes even higher than that. I think you've seen Josh Warrington just recently avoid boxing Kid Galahad again. I think obviously he's been beaten there, but I think he'd rather lose to a Gary Russell Jr. or Leo Santa Cruz than a guy down the road from Leeds, down in Sheffield, that's been egging him on social media for a long time, and they don't want to lose that. And it's the same with the Welsh title. There is local bragging rights, and you just don't want to have that on your record where you've lost to a local rival and you've got to live with that forever. So that does make it challenging for us when we're making these Welsh titles, that sometimes they don't want to take that jump into those title fights.
And another thing that boxers often talk about is ticket deals, in that boxers are expected to sell so many tickets. Just from a promoter's point of view, can you just tell us why that's vitally important for yourselves?
The truth of the matter is, and this is the sad reality of it, people don't just come to watch the boxing shows anymore. I talked to my father a lot about this, and 25 years ago, when he was started out in promoting, he said majority of the show he would be able to sell to fans, to people that wanted to come to shows, local shows, support local boxing, see some local fights. That just doesn't exist nowadays, and that's not just our shows. That's shows all across the country. I speak to small hall promoters across the country, and they all face the similar challenges. And it's the onus is very much moved towards the fighters being able to sell tickets, and there's pros and cons to that. Some fighters I know that are selling extraordinary amount of tickets, and they're getting very well paid for the level of fight that they're having. On the flip side, you have other boxers that unfortunately can't sell many tickets, and obviously pro rata, it doesn't work out very well with their purses. And the truth of the matter is, there isn't enough money at that grassroots level, for the boxer, most importantly the trainer, the manager, the promoter, just across the board. It's a dire situation, and that is why I've been trying to push it, and others, that we need support from the board to make it more financially viable. We need some more support from the top level of the sport, where millions and millions of pounds are being made and generated, and not drip fed down. And it's really challenging for boxers, really challenging.
I'm sure the Board of Control are aware of these things. So when these issues get brought up in meetings, I'm sure other promoters at your level are talking about it as well. What is the response from the officials at the Board of Control?
I think, they see it. I think you'd have to sort of get Robert Smith to answer that one. And I certainly don't want to upset the board, because I think they do a tremendous job under a lot of pressure at times, and I think fundamentally the most important thing is they keep the sport safe, and that does come at a big cost. I think they would say it's your business and it's for you to sort of half work out. I think they try to keep the license fees as favourable as possible, and the board taxes, etc. Overall, it does need, I think this is a perfect opportunity to relook at everything and say, how do we go forward? Because it's not really sustainable long term,
If you were able to wave a magic wand, Jamie's magic wand, and change 2 or 3 things, whether it's likely to happen or not, but it's probably not, just to help grassroots small hall boxing, what would they be? Yeah,
it would definitely be, that percentage of funds that comes from the TV money and the sponsorships, the major sponsors, drip fed down. I think just to alleviate the pressure, that can be, that would enable small hall promoters to put on better shows, better fights, pay the boxers, better. That would be my one thing. So it is really just a financial
It's basically all down to money. Is that what you're saying?
And
Essentially,
that's how the world works, you know. Fundamentally, boxers are, you know, it's a prize fighting game. You know, they're boxing for money, and their dream, it's twofold. They want to create a legacy and become a champion, but you know, first and foremost, you want to put food on the table for your family, and it comes in the terms of money.
we've already mentioned the border control, and I think generally speaking, people within British boxing agree that the border control do an excellent job in probably making British boxing rings the safest in the world, and they should be commended for that. However, just recently, again, there's been controversial scorecards, questionable decisions by officials. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was a shame it wasn't the same for when Lee Selby boxed George Kambosos. Yeah, I wouldn't have been moaning so much then if they'd give us the decision. And we seem to be the only fight that hasn't gone the way of a British boxer in a close fight. And yeah, but I think, like, people say, oh, the game's corrupt and crooked. You know, it's not. You know, it's not brown paper envelopes and mafia style. You know, it's. I think it's just down to education of the officials and the judges, and you know, without incompetence at times, you know, and they're getting things wrong. I don't go into the ins and outs of how judges are assessed and referees are assessed. You know, it's not one for me, but there doesn't seem to be that degree of accountability, and we never seem to get any answers about what's being done to improve it from the board. You know, you never hear from the judges or the referees after these fights, so you never really find out what's being done to rectify this and improve it. You know, and British boxing is now getting a really sort of bad rap, I think, across the world. As you know, we always joked about Germany. You could never go to Germany and get a decision. You know, you've got to get a knockout to get a draw, all that kind of stuff. And I think, you know, British boxing is now probably taken that mantle as the place that you can't get a decision now.
Did you feel that is actually, did you feel that of other people involved in boxing from, I mean, I know you're involved in a lot of meetings with different people from all the world. Is that actually the reputation British boxing is getting now?
Yeah, I think it is, you know, and I know certain managers in America, whatnot, use it as leverage to say, we're not sending our fighter there, we're going to get robbed, we've got no chance, you'll have to pay us more money, etc., etc. So yeah, it's, you know, it's there for everybody to see. You know, it's sort of every month now. You know, when the boxing's on, there's another bad decision or a poor referee performance, and you know, it's not across the board. Often it's sort of one judge out of three that's sort of, you know, it's a fight that could have gone around either way, and suddenly you've got one judge 118, 110, and you're just like, you know, it's mind-boggling. And then obviously on Twitter, etc., it just gains momentum. And I think maybe social media has played a part in highlighting this more over recent years. And the frustrating thing is, you end up talking more about the judging than the great fight that you've just watched, and that's the real shame.
From a promoter's point of view, do you have any influence on who the officials are for a contest, for a fight? Say you've got a Welsh title fight on, or a international title fight on one of your bills. Do you have any say on who the officials are, or can you appeal if the border control put certain officials in place to oversee the fight?
No, not on a British level. On a world title level, you can put appeals into sort of the IBF, the WBC. We've done that in the past. You know, I know when we boxed, Lee Selby boxed Josh Warrington, you know, the IBF could have chosen judges all over the world, and suddenly I think we had two within an hour's drive of Leeds. Yeah, you know, and we complained and said, like, you know, you can choose judges from all over the world, and we've got two English judges. And this is what I was trying to explain to the IBF. Look, you've got to understand, there is a rivalry between Wales and England. And not only have you chosen English judges, but you've chosen English judges in the sort of northern, you know, part of the country, which is where it based from. And to be honest, the IBF didn't really realise, and I raised it with Robert Smith, and we had the usual argument. And, you know, but it was tweaked. But generally, that's the only time I know that you can really enforce your views, and it's not always taken on board.
You mentioned the Selby-Warrington fight, which of course took place in Leeds in Ellen Road. The perception was that Frank Warren, who was promoting Warrington at the time, was doing everything possible to make things as difficult for Lee as possible and for his team. Is that something you'd agree with?
I wouldn't say making it as difficult as possible. I think there was certain things that we weren't happy about, security arrangements. We ended up taking control of a lot of our preparation. So we chose the hotel where we stayed. We controlled our own transportation. So we weren't reliant on the promoter or anybody else. And that wasn't particularly because it was Frank Warren or anything like that. I think we took that decision because we wanted control of it. So if we wanted the car to be there when we wanted it to take us somewhere, it was there. We chose our hotel so we could keep private, and we chose a hotel that was in private grounds that couldn't be disturbed. I think the hotel that was suggested by the promoter was on a main busy street in the middle of Leeds that wasn't practical. Dressing rooms were fine. We had a nice, everything was okay. Obviously it was, when the promoter is backing the other guys, there's going to be little intricacies that don't go your way, and they can agitate you, but that is part of the game. And especially with my father, we're sort of long in the tooth, and we know a lot of the tricks of the trade, and it didn't affect the preparation. Actually, we had a good week up in Leeds in the lead up to the fight. The only thing was security arrangements at the sort of public workout, and especially at the weigh-in, was very poor and disappointing, really.
What's it like dealing with the various governing bodies in boxing? Because these days you've got 4 main governing bodies and a host of other up-and-coming governing bodies, if you want to call them that. The reputation of boxing and the governing bodies itself is not particularly good, and rightly or wrongly, the impression is that a lot of backhand deals get done to help fighters get up the rankings.
Yeah, I think there's relationships, that promoters will have with certain governing bodies that are well documented and can easily be seen. I think that's less so nowadays, with it being a lot more transparent with, purse bids that are public. You can go on a Zoom call and see a purse bid at the moment. I think there's a lot more scrutiny over rankings and ratings. So I think it's certainly improved over the years, but it is a relationship building business. Each of those governing bodies will have a convention each year, and we've been, just like others, taking, certainly Lee Selby, Haskins and stuff to conventions to meet the governing bodies and show our respect. And it's part of the business to build those relationships to get good rankings. It's the way it's been. Is it the right way? Probably not, no. But fundamentally, it's a business that's very highly unregulated. There's no one overarching FIFA or UEFA, but let's be honest, when you look at football, it's not like they've got it right with having a FIFA or a UEFA. It's as corrupt as anything over the last 10, 15 years. So it's not ideal. I think everybody would agree if we started from scratch, you'd have one world title, one world champion at each weight. But that's just not going to happen. I know Eddie Hearn is and Al Heyman has tried in the past to sort of try to get that back to some sort of control where you have a recognized world champion. And I know Eddie's got sort of plans and ideals, and Al Heyman, the big power brokers of the sport, but it's very hard to sort of, at the end of the day, if you've got a world title, if you've got a WBC world title, or you've got an IBF world title, it gives you such great leverage to generate purses, big money, big fights, that it's hard to, dissuade a boxer to not go that route.
I've been around you a few times, Jamie, when you've been getting ready for your shows. when you've been dealing with the weigh-ins, dealing with last-minute problems? What's the most stressful events you've been involved in? Are there any? I can think of a few that might possibly be on the list, but I don't.
Yeah, the worst ones are I think the worst ones are the small horse shows with live TV. You know, the ones you've been a part of with S4C, because you're pretty much trying to do everything that you would do for, say, a Sky Sports show. And you know, those are shows that will probably be, you know, 15 matchroom staff, matchroom boxing staff, 40 Sky Sports staff, you know, and everybody's got a certain role. And then suddenly we're doing it with S4C, and there's a handful of S4C staff, and then there's a handful of my staff, some of them just helping me out, doing a favor. And we're trying to do about 7 or 8 jobs at the same time. And boxers are turning up late for shows, and it's for the stress and the anguish that you go through to try and put on a good show. And a funny thing was Pebbles, Paul, the trainer up in Mountain Ash. He's only ever seen me in that environment, stressed and shouting at everybody. And I think deep down he just thought, oh, he's just a tosser, this guy. he's always moody and shouting at everybody. And I went to Italy with them to when Tony Dixon boxed Maxim Prodan back in 2019. I think it was 2020. I can't remember. Time goes on now.
I remember the fight, yeah.
Dixon got fiddled out, and I thought he'd won that fight, but again, that was the hometown decision. And Pebbles we spent 2-3 days together, relaxed, you know, and having some fun. And we went to the San Siro, and we had a great couple of days. And he said, "Geez, you're actually a good guy." I said, "Yeah, I am." I said, "You only ever see me at the height of severe stress and anxiety when I'm doing these shows." I said, "Away from that, I'm a good bloke, trust me." Very nice, but yeah, those are the worst. The big fights, you know, Lee Selby at the O2, yeah, they're stressful because you're constantly analysing the fight and hoping that your boxer wins. But generally, everything's laid on for you. Great service, great hotel, everything's done for you, and you can solely focus on getting that boxer into the best frame of mind and, you know, the best place for his contest.
I remember, I think it was actually which fight was it? Was one of the S4C ones. It was Angelo Dragoni when he fought Christian Toos. And I think I'm right in saying the doctor turned up late.
Yeah. Two of the doctors turned up late. So we couldn't start the show, obviously, without the anaesthetist and the doctors there. And obviously what S4C do is record a certain amount of fights before they go live on the air. So they've got them pre-recorded. So if the main event goes in one round and the chief support goes in one round, they've got lots of other action in the can as such to show for the rest of the sort of 2-hour program. Doctors turned up late. I think we ended up not starting the show for about an hour and well over an hour after. And we could only record a couple of fights before we went live. And basically, if the live fights hadn't have gone the duration, we just pretty much didn't have much to broadcast. And yeah, it's just so stressful. And it's just those oversights that are out of your control that you forget about. And then you're like, where's the doctor? You've done everything else. The fighters are here, you know, and I had fighters coming from all over the country. The doctor's coming from Cardiff to Swansea, and he's late. And you can't really shout too much at the doctor, because he could just walk off and then suddenly you've got no show. So it's, yeah, just all these things you wouldn't believe.
And that night actually was a really good night of boxing, because you had 3 good fights on there. The 2 good Welsh title fights, and Tony Dixon was in a better than expected fight as well. At the end of the night, do you think sometimes that's why I do it, or do you think, why do I do it?
I know why I do it. It's because my father dragged me into it. I was born into it, and if I left him on his own to do it now, he'd find it difficult. So yeah, I was sort of born into it with no choice. Sometimes I wish my father had been a doctor or something like that, or a lawyer. And I'd followed that path, and life would be a lot easier nowadays. But no, I was born into the sport, and it's, you love it, and those nights where it all comes together, they're great. And if you put on an action-packed night, that's why I love the Welsh titles, because as soon as that title's on the line, 9 times out of 10 you're going to get a great fight for the fans, great fight for TV, and it's been real boost for us to be able to get S4C to broadcast those shows as well, to give them the boxers some more profile, and get them onto that next level, really, where they can then springboard off onto bigger promotions. And you've seen that with the likes of Gavin Gwynn, Nathan Thorley. Other boxers have been able to use that as a springboard. And it's been great to get that Welsh title back, regularly fought for.
Just a couple of points about the Welsh title. Am I right in saying that by putting a Welsh title fight on the bill, there's a extra financial costs for yourselves?
Yeah, there is, with the sort of sanctioning fees and stuff, but it's not a major expense. One of the things that annoys me is that they want to charge you for the belt, and they want to charge the boxer for the belt. And I just find that, with all the money that does come into the British Boxing Board of Control, for them to then want to charge hundreds and hundreds of pounds for a Welsh title belt, it's just madness to me. Madness.
And the other question I was going to ask, the Welsh title, or the Welsh belt, whatever we call it, it's actually officially a regional championship. So at the moment, there's only, the referee is basically the sole scoring judge, which can sometimes lead to debatable scorecards or controversial scorecards. Is there any lobbying on behalf of people like yourselves who put on Welsh title fights to have 3 judges as opposed to just the one? Because I know in England, when they have English title fights, they have 3 judges.
Yeah, so they sort of recognise that. So for those that don't know, you have areas in British boxing. The council, the British Boxing Board of Control, split it into councils. So you have the southern area, the Midlands area, the northern area, the Scottish area, the Welsh area. And so theoretically, you're actually boxing for the Welsh area title. But I think that, the way we sort of promote it is very much as a Welsh sort of national title. I think it's difficult because suddenly, if you have 3 judges, we've seen that it doesn't actually result in better decisions often. We've seen that with the big fights that have been on Sky and whatnot. And also, it's the expense that then comes with that, because you've got the expenditure of those judges, of their fees, their expenses. Some of these judges can be coming 200-mile round trip, etc., etc. There's also not that many Welsh judges or Welsh referees, officials. So I don't even know if there would be enough Welsh area officials to cover that fight. So they'd have to get them from further afield. So, and also you've got to remember that there's, in pre-COVID, post-COVID, there's a large amount of shows going on a Friday and Saturday evening. There's only a certain amount of officials that can be spread across those shows. So I just don't think the British Boxing Board of Control have even got that capacity. But with my promoter's hat on, it's just added expense. And I don't think we've generally seen too many controversial Welsh area title decisions in relation to, say, the decisions we've seen with 3 judges with the British title and Commonwealth title, etc.
You mentioned your dad there, Chris, who's been on the British boxing scene seemingly forever. He seems to pop up at different shows, whether it's as managing fighters or training fighters or as a cutsman. Did he encourage you to box yourself?
No. He always sort of was very much of, I did the fighting for you. And I actually went to boarding school at 7 years of age, all the way through till I was 18. So I wasn't traditionally sort of in a gym every evening as you'd expect a boxer's son to be. And and I was fortunate enough to be sort of sent away to a good boarding school where I got a good education, and that probably made me a bit softer as well. And then by the time, I spent time in the gym sparring as a kid, etc., etc. But I certainly didn't ever have that's something that you need to be a fighter. It's a very unique person that can do what boxers do. Very few, and my admiration for them from a journeyman upwards is incredible, because you've got to be a very special person to be able to step through those ropes, and the bravery, the roller coaster of emotions I see boxers have to go through, from fear, insecurity, etc., through to actually getting in that ring, and then walking through the fire to get the win is mind-blowing at times.
I'm guessing, Jamie, you were probably the only person in your boarding school whose dad was a professional boxer.
Yeah. I was definitely a unique one. And, I had a mixture. We were kids from all over the world. A lot of kids in the services. Their dads were in the RAF and whatnot. But I was definitely the only one with a professional boxer, which it certainly gave me a bit of swagger walking around the boarding house. And mind you, still the older boys would still give me a good kicking now and again. But it was different in those days. You took your kickings fair and square.
You just mentioned there some of the the highs and some of the way you admire fighters. I mean, what were some of your greatest memories in boxing that you've been involved in and your dad's been involved in?
I think for us, the main two that stick out for me, because my generation is slightly different than my father's. He goes back to sort of the days of when Glenn Catley became world champion and Ross Hell became British champion, and but for me, I think the two Lees, Lee Selby in Wales, it's just been an incredible journey, and to just be there from the start, to see a young boy from Barry that had a decent enough reputation, but it was a reputation of, he's got a bit of talent, but he doesn't live the life, and he'd be hard work, and etc., and just to see his transformation over the years from that sort of young kid from the council estate that was a bit of a tearaway to now a family man that's very, created a legacy for himself as one of Wales's world champions, and I think just generally regarded as a top guy, family man. He's financially secure, and to see that success story from start to where it is now has been great. Same with Lee Haskins. We were very close, known him since he was 14 years of age, to follow his journey through. And I think when Lee Selby was sort of really going through the gears, when he beat Gradovic, I think for us it was expected. For Lee Haskins, he was the nearly man. At one stage he'd lost 2 out of 3 fights. He'd been stopped twice at sort of British title level. For him to regroup, I think he was questioned on his temperament and his bottle in the ring, and for him to turn that around and then become world champion, and be in some really tough, grueling fights where he showed his character. They're nights and times I'll never forget.
I remember with the Haskins fight, because I was there that night ringside, and I can't remember. Was it the 8th round he knocked him out?
It was, I forget which round it is.
But I just remember you jumping in the ring and running over and giving him a big, massive hug.
Yeah, it was an emotional time, and I think you go through a lot of adversity. We sort of grown up together, Early days we'd be in the nightclubs together. I've seen him have children. I've seen him have trials and tribulations. I've gone through the same, and had children, and we've grown up together. I'm only a few years older than him. He's down the gym. Well, he wasn't down the gym as much as I'd like throughout his career, but generally we'd see each other every day, and you do build a bond and a friendship that goes beyond. And it's nice when you have that from start to finish. Lee's retired now, but he's down the gym training the boxers. His son's now signed professional with us, and you know, for us as a business, I think it's a good resume that, you know, we are able to stay with these boxers throughout their careers if they do listen. And if you do listen and keep dedicated, you will fulfill your potential.
A lot of people with guys like Lee Haskins and Lee Selby just see the end result, winning the world title. But yourself and, you know, Sanigar Events, Sanigar Promotions, you've actually invested thousands, tens of thousands of pounds in guys like Lee Selby to bring them to that world title shot.
Yeah, you know, I think if you put on an hourly rate, you know, over the years, you'd probably have been better in McDonald's. You know, it is, but it's not about, you know, of course, yeah, we all want it to be financially sustainable, and, you know, they become world champion. There's good money to be earned, but it's more than that. You know, it's a lifestyle. If you want to be in boxing, you've got to accept it's a lifestyle, you know, rather than, you know, a financial. You know, you can't business plan it like you can a traditional business. And, you know, I have other business interests and other things that I have to do to earn money, because you can't be reliant on the business that we have in boxing. So yeah, it's just how it is.
And on Lee Selby, what's the next step for him after his the controversial points loss to Kambosa?
Well, yeah, it was very frustrating with that fight, because it was, you know, like you said, it was controversial. It was a close fight. It could have gone either way. And it was a real lost opportunity for us, and certainly Lee, you know. And I think at the moment, Lee's just got back into training, and we're very much just seeing what the options are out there, speaking with sort of, you know, the promoters, and seeing what options are there for him. You know, the IBF, we've worked hard again with the IBF to sort of put our case forward that it was a controversial decision, and you know, they've sort of recognised that and ranked him at number 4 at the moment, and they've still got him ranked highly. So sometimes you just got to take a step back and just see which is the best route for him. I think he needs to get back in the gym, get back training, sparring. He lives the life, so you've never got to worry about him. You know, he likes a bit of cheesecake, etc. But he's not a Ricky Hatton that blows up and suddenly goes on the booze, etc. He lives a very, very disciplined lifestyle. So I think it's just a matter of him getting back in the gym. And then I think it's very much a him to sort of guide things in the sense of where his desires and ambitions are going forward. He, you know, it's accepted he's getting into the latter parts of his career. And this is, I think, also where we got to be sensible and careful to ensure that we protect him and make sure that he certainly doesn't have too many fights down the line. And we just got to find the right opportunities.
And who are the stars of the future we can expect to see come from the Sanigar stable of fighters over the next, hopefully the next few years when boxing restarts for the grassroots level? Yeah,
I think, you know, looking over in Wales, I think, you know, Jordan Withers is a very good talent. Joshua John has looked, you know, exceptional once he stepped in the ring. I think the boys up in North Wales, you know, sort of slightly off the radar sometimes because of where they are, but Sean Yaxley, Jerome Warburton, I think they'll come through, and I think they could be, you know, making waves in the future. And I think all these boys have got the opportunity to sort of become TV fighters as such on the big platforms. And then there's, you know, the fighters like Robbie Vernon, you know, a tremendous puncher. Jake Tinkling's been in some good scraps already. And these boys, sometimes you just have to wait and see how they step up through the levels. It wasn't like, for example, Lee Selby, you know, you could see glimpses of it as he stepped through the levels and he get to Welsh title level and he sort of stopped Di Davies and the Celtic title. But it wasn't, you wouldn't be sat there going, oh, this kid's going to become a world champion. At that stage, it's about stepping up through those gears and how do they progress. Once they get to Welsh title level, can they step up? When they get to British title level, you know, Lee Selby went up to box Stephen Smith, who's a huge underdog, and he just blew him away. Then he blew John Simpson away. Then he blew a dangerous sort of Ghanaian away. You know, so you started thinking, okay, well, no, there's more levels here. Then you start thinking, well, okay, European, is that going to be the leveler for that? And then they get through that. And yeah, so I think for those boxers like Robbie Byrne, Lloyd Germain as well, just seeing how those guys develop, be really interesting over the next few years. And main thing is just getting them back active. But thankfully they're all young and they've got time on their hands. And that, there's not necessarily a bad thing, you know, because some of them are too young. You know, Jordan Withers, for example, and they're not going to be in their primes to their sort of 24, 25, 26, 27. So whilst they're eager and young and want to crack on, sometimes it's not a bad thing.
Okay, thank you for your time this morning, Jamie. It's been great to see you, not stressed, as you mentioned. And good to catch up with you with a number of subjects. Is there any social media people can follow you and your Sanigar promotions on, just to keep up to date with things?
Yeah. So it's at Sanigar events for sort of all our boxing news and upcoming news that hopefully will kickstart again soon. And you know, me personally, sort of just at Jamie Sanigar on the usual sort of channels. Twitter's my main one, I suppose. And yeah, just hopefully we can get boxing back going in Wales, you know, this year, and you know, create more champions for the future.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Thanks for your time, and hopefully see you sometime in the near future, mate.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Hello, so we're Pontypridd. Can I take your order, please?